bringing the heat. You know she's bringing the heat. Florida. Okay, so Veronica, I want to go ahead and welcome you. I know that our topic today is going to be focused on present it and quit it. How to give a dynamic presentation to any, I'm missing a word, body? Any audience. It was cut off. How to give a dynamic presentation to any audience. So Veronica, welcome back to BSN. I got your slide deck here. We are ready to go, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I am Veronica Blakely, the premier communications coach for entrepreneurs and presenters, teaching them effective communication so they can present it and quit it. First, I want to thank Brian Oles and the Black Speakers Network for allowing me this opportunity to share with you all today. And it appears that many of the speakers are on the same message. We are all sharing some of the same and different information. However, research says you have to hear something 17 times before you really get it. So if this is your first time or the 17th time, go ahead and take it in. Maybe we're saying something a little different than what you've heard it before. But what I want you to do is to feel the flow, fit the flow, and follow the flow of my presentation, and share your comments into the chat, because I am sure others will want to be able to hear and see this, whether they are live or on the replay. My presentation today is Present It and Quit It: How to Give a Dynamic Presentation to Any Audience. My overview: presentation basics, communication basics. I will talk to you about the FLAIR method. You see that is an acronym. And I will go back and give you a little summary. And if you feel like it, go into the chat room. Make sure you hashtag present it and quit it. Present it and quit it. Starting off with presentation basics. Everybody says, we know that that's what you're supposed to do at the beginning of a presentation: opening, body, and conclusion. Newsflash, everybody does not know that. There are some people who seem to start in the middle of their presentation or at the ending, or actually you don't even know where they started. For instance, every car, whether it's a Toyota or it's a Tesla or Rolls Royce, they can all go at least 60 to maybe 130 miles per hour, but they all have to start at 0. They all have to start at the opening before they can actually go up to 5 miles or 50 miles. That's what you need to do in your presentation, because if you start out at 60 miles an hour, your audience is going to get whiplash, and they won't know exactly what it is you're doing, where you at in your presentation, and they say, whoa, did you get that? You're trying to take notes, and they don't know where you are. So make sure that you are following through on the basics of your presentation skills. In fact, most books, movies, stories, or poems are written in this format. All attorneys have used this format as well. It's their opening argument, the body, the facts of what they're delivering to the jury, and then their closing arguments. The only person I know who does not follow that format is Pulitzer Prize winning author Toni Morrison. I tried to read one of her books, and by the second chapter, I had to stop because I did not know what I was reading. When I saw the movie Beloved, I understood it. But she is a genius at that format. However, if you're not a Pulitzer Prize winning author like Toni Morrison, I recommend you do what the rest of us do: opening, body, and conclusion. Type that in the chat for me, please. Opening, body, and conclusion. This is a bonus note, and I will have several bonus notes throughout my presentation. Sound like the expert without telling them you are the expert. Sound like the expert without telling them you are the expert. For instance, if you're giving clear content in your presentation, they know that you are the expert in what you are delivering. At the beginning of most presentations, a host is going to already introduce you. However, if your background is part of your journey, then that's your story, you will share it in your presentation, as the previous speaker did. But if you are taking 5 to 10 minutes out of your presentation to tell everyone about your bio, that's basically just a bio on bullet points. And they don't want to hear that. It sounds like you are bragging. So you want to make sure that you give them good content, and they will know that you're the expert without you having to tell them you are the expert. Communication basics. 55% of your message is body language, from head to toe. When you stand before someone or even on a virtual presentation, people are checking to see if you look like what you say you do. They're seeing for ladies if you are mic'd up or jacked up. They're looking to see men and women if your clothes have wrinkles in it. Do you know what an iron looks like? If you're standing in front of other people, they're seeing if your shoes are run over. Yes, it is just that serious. 55% of your message is your body language. Most times we ask, can you repeat yourself? It's not because we didn't hear you. We heard you. We were taking all of this in and we couldn't tell. Okay, are they really going to talk about dress for success when they are really not dressed for success? You get the message. 38% of your message is your tone of voice. Do you sound confident? Do you sound clear? Do you sound competent in what you are delivering? For instance, if I was to say, I am happy, my body language didn't say I was happy. My tone of voice did not say I was happy. Only my words said that I was happy. And 7% of your words are your message. So you have to be careful with the words you use. Individuals who are in technical fields such as finance, computers, or the medical field, you have language that is not known to the general public. Therefore, you have to make sure that you tamper down your language for the general public so that they will know what it is you're talking about. For the rest of us, we will try to, of course, read like most newspapers that are on the 7th grade level and understand what it is you're saying. But for those who have a lot of technical language, please make sure that your presentation fits the audience. So let's talk about what the meat of this message is. This presentation is generally about 30 to 45 minutes, but I'm going to get to the meat so that we can eat. Put that in the chat. But get to the meat so that we can eat. This is a way that you can give a dynamic presentation by learning this acronym FLAIR, F-L-A-I-R versus F-L-A-R-E. FLAIR is to do something well. You want to be prepared. You want to show up on time. You want to give people something to take home with them so that they will remember you as a presenter. As opposed to flare, burst of flame, burst of a bright flame. In other words, do you want your presentation to be remembered and be awesome, or do you want it to be a hot mess? So let's try to use the right flair when we're talking in terms about our presentation. Type that in the chat room, F-L-A-I-R, flair, for your presentation. And let's start with the F. Have facts in your presentation. Someone talked about this earlier. Having research and data shows that you are the expert. It validates your presentation and it validates you. I gave you some information earlier about the communication statistics, how that really validates this presentation because I'm talking about communication in that particular sense. So make sure you have facts as a part of your presentation. What will people learn? They're listening to what you're going to share so that they will be able to take notes. When I gave this presentation to the Lakeland Light Chamber, I was surprised when I looked at the picture and all eyes were on me. Well, that's because I had to teach them something. So if they're going to learn something, you have to be able to teach something. And when I'm able to teach them communication skills, that is my background, that is what I do. As a former high school teacher and a former college instructor, teaching is what I do. But make sure that your audience will learn something. As a former president and area governor with Toastmasters International, we learn audible pauses and filler words. If you take these words out of your presentation will be a lot more dynamic. Filler words such as, okay, you know what I mean, like, well, that's a Southern thing. So, like, and the excessive use of and. Let me say this. Audible pauses or filler words are fine as long as you do not use them excessively. What I generally tell my clients is to take their cell phone and put it on record while they're having a general conversation. At the end of that conversation, they should go in the privacy of their own home, listen to that message to see how many audible pauses they had. And you want to put a tick mark by each one of those audible pauses. You continue to do that until you have Decrease the amount of audible pauses you use. Again, audible pauses are fine as long as you do not use them excessively. And if you don't want to record yourself while you're with someone, go back to one of your previous presentations and do the same thing. Trust me, it will help you out. And when you hear your voice, you're not going to like what the sound of your voice is. I didn't like mine. When I was in college and I looked at the video, I said, that looked like me, but it didn't sound like me. But I had to learn to grow into my voice. And now I use my voice to get paid. So whatever your voice sounds like it anyway. A is for action. That A in flair is for action. You have to give actionable steps in your presentation. I just gave you an action step to record your voice. People are listening for the notes that you want to give out so that they will know that there's something for them to do after the presentation is over. The action steps allow them to want to contact you again if they have some information they want to follow up on, or for you to be hired again for another presentation. You want to have action so that people will know, oh, that was really good. Did you get that information? Oh, that person was great. I think I'll write that down. Put in the chat room, action steps. You want to have content that is filled with action. However, you want to be careful not to give too much information, because if you tell all of your intellectual property, people will go out and hang up a sign, and the next thing you know, they are doing exactly what you told them to do. So what I've done in order to avoid that, and I give this other bonus note, what I do is for free. How I do it is for a fee. Say that with me. What I do is for free. How I do it is for a fee. I'm a communication skills trainer. I'm teaching you about communication skills that I'm training you on. How I do it? Well, then you would have to set up a consultation with me. Basically, that is what you do too as an entrepreneur. As Cheryl Wood said yesterday, when people ask if they can go out and take her to lunch and pick her brain, she said, sure, and I'll be bringing the invoice with me so that you can pay me for picking my brain. Your intellectual property is what you have studied, trained, learned, and no one should be able to get that for free. Is your presentation of interest? The I in flair is of interest. You have to think in terms of interesting things so that the audience doesn't look confused, like this gentleman here in the photograph. How do you make your presentation interesting? Your message. You want to master the details of your message. You want to know it in and out, backwards and forward, upwards and down. You want to maximize the benefits. How are you different from somebody else who's doing the same thing? You want to memorize your message. Memorize the key points of your message so that if your presentation was to shut down right now, or if your flip chart fell over, or your whiteboard all of a sudden was not available for you, would you know how to deliver your message? You need to memorize your message for your key points. And you also need to monetize your message. Is what you're saying in your presentation is so dynamic that after your presentation, people are going to run out to your table to purchase your products and your services. Not so much that you can sell all the time, but is it worth selling to someone when they hear your message? Bonus note, if you cannot write your message in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. If you cannot write your message in a sentence, you can't say it in an hour. My message, I'm giving a dynamic presentation on Present It and Quit It. What are you going to tell them about your presentation? You have to be able to write it in a sentence so they can say it. So that if you can't write it in a sentence, you won't be able to say it in an hour. In other words, you need to know what it is you're talking about and be confident and clear about what you are presenting. Your message also needs to be relevant. That's the R in flair. It needs to be relevant to the audience you're speaking with. When I spoke to these ladies with Dress for Success, many of these women were from battered shelters. Many of them were homeless. They had been unemployed, or some of them were in a reentry program because they had been incarcerated. You have to find out who your audience is before you get to your presentation so that you can craft your message to that audience. Even with those individuals in that audience, many of them were being unemployed. At that time, even though I was doing many presentations, I could relate to them being unemployed. Even though I was 4 classes away from the PhD, I couldn't get hired because I had too much experience and too much education. Therefore, I was able to relate to them, even though they may not have had a degree. And I was able to make the unemployment situation relevant to where they were at that particular point in time, because it also was relevant to me. Make sure that you are relevant. So how do you present it and quit it in your presentation? You say it and shush. You tell it and terminate it. You talk it and halt it. Go ahead and put that in the chat. You say it and shush. You tell it and terminate it. You talk it and halt it. In other words, one of my other favorite bonus notes, you need to have a point, make a point, and get to the point. Tell them what you're going to tell them. Go ahead and tell them, and then tell them what you told them. Real simple. Opening, body, conclusion. And that is how you're able to have a dynamic presentation, no matter who your audience might be. And then you will be able to present it and quit it. So in summary, you want to make sure you have an outline or an agenda for your audience, something for them to follow you by so they know where you are in your presentation. You don't want them to look confused or asking questions like, well, did she start or is she ending? What are you doing? No, have an outline and agenda ahead of time. You want to check your communication skills. If you need a communications coach, you need to hire one. When you listen to your messages, and if you're not clear and distinct or confident in your message, you can get into Toastmasters, as someone else said earlier, and practice. You want to use the FLAIR method. You want to have facts in your presentation. Let the audience learn something. You want to make sure there are actionable steps for the audience. Make it interesting because you're mastering your message, and you want to make it relevant. Use the FLAIR method, and you will make sure you will have a dynamic presentation no matter who your audience is. And of course, at the end, you always want to allow time for questions and answers. If there are no questions and answers, usually sometimes in my presentations when I talk about communication, most people are afraid to talk. However, what I do is put 3 to 5 questions in a basket, and I will have someone take one of those questions, read it out loud so that I'm able to engage with the audience and make them relax so that I think that I'm judging them in their communication skills. And so I want to thank you for sharing with me today. And because you stayed with us for the last speaker of the day, I have a free download for you at my website, 10 Tips for Effective Communication. Go to vblakely.com,